I'm Charlotte McLeod with investingnews.com, and here today with me is Dr. Stephen Leeb. You can find him at stephenleeb.com on Substack, and he's head of Leeb Capital Management. Thank you so much for being here. Great to have you.
It's a pleasure, Carol. Charlotte, I'm getting off to a poor start in this interview. It's a pleasure, Charlotte. It really is. Really looking forward to it. I've seen your other interviews, and I think they're all excellent.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you as well. And it's our first time talking, so we've got plenty of ground to cover. Where I thought we could start is with gold. When you look at the metal right now, where would you place it overall in the cycle?
I would place us nowhere near the top. But basically, I would say that, viewing it as a cycle is probably a mistake at this point. I mean, gold's, high point, might not ever really be defined, because I think at the end of this period that we're in, you're going to find gold at the center of the world's monetary system. I think it's key to remember that gold is not really something that should be thought of like stocks in a particular cycle. It's not a Fibonacci cycle or anything like that. Short term, maybe it applies, but basically these are very unusual times in history. We are at a inflection point, a major inflection point. Maybe we've never seen anything like this before. Maybe it does resemble other times in the past, but whatever the case, this is a very, very unusual time. I can find certainly no recent time that even remotely resembles what we're going through right now on many, many different levels. If you want a benchmark for looking at gold, the only one that comes anywhere possibly close, it would be the period 1974. In which case, this is just from an economic point of view, but there was also a transition during that period between gold-backed U.S. dollar and a dollar that was no longer gold-backed, and then transitioned into a dollar that became the reserve currency because it became the petrodollar. But how I see the resemblance between that time and this time is that you were in an economic situation in which you're likely to see inflation before you see a recession. And you're seeing certainly some of that right now. And if you kind of step back and look at, people will say, well, oil's up just because of Iran. No, it's not up just because of Iran. I think there's genuine shortages of oil. There's certainly shortages of natural gas. And that's likely to continue. And indeed, all commodities, once you get past the precious metals and you go to the industrial commodities, for example, you'll see copper, I think, 20-30% above its highs in 2008 when it made a previous all-time high. We have blown out the all-time highs in copper. And I single out copper because it's the most important industrial metal. I think people generally accept it, whether you're talking about AI or you're just talking about virtually anything you name. There's copper all around me right now, as there is around you. And there's a shortage of copper, a profound shortage of copper in the world. And that's why it's at all-time highs. World demand is certainly not at an all-time high. So it just leaves one, you don't have to be a genius to figure out if demand's not an all-time high and copper's soaring past all-time highs, you have a demand problem. And it's certainly not going to be unique to copper. Whether you're talking rare earths or you're talking aluminum, the whole gamut of commodities are in short supply. Oil, I do believe it's only a matter of time before it is in short supply. You've had $100 oil before, but everybody is talking about this as if it's an unprecedented oil crisis. No. You go back to 2008, you saw oil trading at $150, and we're not there. We still have at least another $50 to go. So, the point being, again, the similarity between now and any other time, except for 1974, is absent. And 1974, I don't think is a particularly good example. There we were going one way, where the dollar was becoming the reserve currency. Here we're going exactly the opposite way, where gold is regaining that reserve status. And it's happening every day, which makes this period of time so difficult. I mean, we are fighting like fiercely to do whatever we can to keep the dollar in place. It's hopeless. It's just a hopeless fight. And you're seeing all sorts of data points. I'm sort of all over the way, all over everywhere, and trying to answer your question. But again, just in terms of 1974, you could break it up into two periods. I mean, you had inflation, and you're much too young to remember, but unfortunately, I'm not. I remember the so-called win buttons. Have you ever heard of win buttons? That they were buttons everybody was wearing at 1974 as we were entering a recession. And even when we were in the recession, what did WIN stand for? Whip inflation now. Because we had high inflation, shortages of commodities. I mean, they weren't actual physical shortages, and that's a big difference. There, they were actually politically induced. Basically by Saudi Arabia and OPEC. They stopped pumping oil because they were really angry, about the 7-day war, or not 7-day war, the Yom Kippur War in October, 1973 with Israel. And we took Israel's side. Hasn't changed that much since then. I mean, that's one commonality. But anyway, that made the Saudis and other parts of OPEC very, very angry. They embargoed oil, and it led to a massive boom in commodity prices across the board. Massive inflation for that time. I mean, inflation eventually hit around 10%, but it also led to a recession. And, if you have to choose between, let's say, recession or depression or, very weak economy and inflation, I mean, you've got to be really stupid to choose. You'd rather see a depression than inflation. Inflation's always going to be the lesser of two evils, with the rare exception. And you can always argue maybe we're facing that rare exception now. I hope not. But the Weimar Republic, when you have uncountable amount of inflation. I mean, if that happens, the only thing you want to own, incidentally, is gold. I mean, just parenthetically, that was the only asset that served you well. In fact, it outperformed the decline in the currency. There, I don't know, you had quadrillion fold inflation during that couple of years, or especially the last part of that period in the 20s. Then the only thing to own is gold. But hopefully we won't have that, and we did not have it in 1974. But you did have the similarity that you're seeing right now. The economy is clearly weakening. I don't think there's much argument about that. I mean, statistics typically that I don't pay much attention to are these sentiment numbers. I mean, I've been in this business much longer than you are old, and I've never paid much attention to the sentiment numbers. But when you see record lows in the University of Michigan consumer sentiment, that's telling you something. With the stock market at record highs and general sentiment among consumers at record lows, I mean, something is messed up. I mean, you don't have to be an economist. You just, doesn't make sense. Economy's not doing well. That's for sure. The only thing that is, basically allowing a lot of people to hang in there is the stock market. I mean, the stock market is thought of as a haven for the rich, and, it is. And it's basically because we have such inequalities that you have this market. But on the other hand, another element to it is that the market's making everybody wealthier, at least people that are working. I mean, they've got these 401k plans, and that's part of the problem, to be very honest. I think everyone should, I think the country's so lopsided, it's hard to describe, and I'm not in any way arguing in favor of that continuing. But you have this problem is that people, have become very used to the fact that however often their pay periods are, a little bit of their money will be taken out and invested automatically in the stock market. And if you're investing in the S&P 500 today, you're basically investing in these very, very large cap stocks. I mean, there's 7 stocks or 10 stocks in the S&P 500. They always say Magnificent Seven, but the 7 the names of the seven are sometimes change, not often. But anyway, you're investing in 7 stocks whose capitalization is roughly about the same as the GDP of this country, which is just, it's crazy in that sense. And, let me just stay focused. Okay, so what happened in 1974? That we had whip inflation now, and we were trying to hammer down on inflation in the face of a recession that was occurring under our eyes and was threatening to turn into something much, much worse. I mean, it was threatening to turn into something that could have turned out as bad as the Depression in 1930. And all of a sudden, whip inflation now. Well, we tore up those buttons, even though inflation still had not been conquered, and basically said, we've got to do something about what's going on in the economy. My gosh, forget about inflation. I mean, people are starving, or, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it was really tough going. And then we flipped. In that sense, that you're facing simultaneously inflation and a weakening economy, it's like 1974. So the natural question, finally, in answer to your question, in 1974, you did see gold going up went up sharply. I don't remember the numbers, maybe 65%, 70%, something like that. Now, that did not do the U.S. very much good because you weren't free to own gold in the U.S. So these prices were all based on European markets and London in particular. They did very well owning gold. We did well. Actually, I take it back. We did no gold. I don't take back the fact that no personal ownership of gold was allowed. But just like in the Depression, gold did very, very well there too. But in 1974, the only way you could have participated, as was the case during the Depression, is by buying gold miners. And they did spectacularly well during 1974. So if you want to take a literal message from 1974, it would be own gold miners as protection. It's maybe even better than gold. It's hard to believe because they're so volatile, they're up, down, but they're very fundamentally cheap stocks. And if gold holds more or less its value, which I think is a, very, very good bet, they'll do very well. They will do very well. So to that extent, I think it's very similar to 1974, or at least more similar to 1974 than any other period that I can think of. It's not at all, well, not at all is an exaggeration. It's certainly not really similar to 2008, which is the standard comparison mark you see. But the message, no matter what period of time you want to compare this to, and I don't think there's any that really gets it, nails it. I mean, I think the risks today are greater than they've ever been. Can I say 250 years? However long this republic's been around, I think we're facing really, really grave, potentially grave times. I'm not saying that we won't be able to navigate ourselves out of them, but our worst case scenario today, and I'm not saying that's probable. I don't think anyone knows that at this point. But certainly our worst case scenario today is much worse. And I use much advisedly than anything, not only in even my lifetime, but anyone's lifetime and probably in the history of this country. I mean, we're really facing potential dissolution. I mean, that's an extreme case. But it's unfortunately and tragically, it's a case that's not that hard to make. And we're going to have to accept a number of things in order to avoid that worst case scenario. Now, is there, even in that worst case scenario, though, gold, providing you have it stored physically, is very likely to be a shield, will be a shield, almost guaranteed will be a shield. Because at the end of that case, gold is going to be at the center of a new monetary system. I have very, very little doubt about that. Originally started writing about that in 2018, published a book in 2020, Rise of China and the New Age of Gold. That might not be the exact title. I have trouble remembering the titles of my books. But it basically described about where we're at now. I mean, I sort of got to the point where most countries in the world would accept gold as a new standard or new center for the monetary system. I've been blogging about that in, other places at the time. And what I never could get past, I mean, I had to stop almost exactly where we are now because I wasn't sure how the United States would react to this threat. Now, the sensible thing faced with the threat that we're faced with today. And I'll point out incidences of how you can tell that we're faced with this threat. I mean, it's around us. If we just want to look, I wasn't sure how we were going to react. I mean, it's very tough. I mean, obviously, this doesn't have to mean the dissolution of our country. It doesn't have to mean we give up our Constitution, although I think in some ways we're already already doing it, giving up our Constitution. It just means we have to be willing to cooperate and maybe accept actually a better standard of living if everyone cooperates. I mean, that's the way out. It's very, very simple. And it's very human to want to do this, to cooperate. I believe it's very human. It's not so human to have a war every year for 26 years or however many years. And to, say that you're exceptional and let's pass that exceptionalism around to every other country in the world. Even if it means starting a war and killing everybody and, imbuing them with our exceptionalism. I mean, that's not my idea of exceptionalism, but it's the kind of foreign policy we've been following really since, at least since the early 90s in certain sense. Brzezinski, et cetera, American exceptionalism, spread it all around the world. Kagan and Crystal a little bit later spread, same idea. Even if it involves wars. Well, we've been losing a lot of wars this century. Now we're in a situation where we're not going to win the next war. I mean, basically, what's happening in Iran is not winnable for us, tragically. And it's sending a message that the U.S. is no longer a hegemon in any sense of the world. I mean, there's a lot of data that's been floating around for, 10, 15 years saying that China has passed us in many ways, including, technologies, including, including size. If you measure the economy by what they call purchasing power parity, which is actually, the amount of goods that you produce in constant dollars. If you take currency out of the comparison and just focus on how many goods, what goods you're generating, China's 30% larger than we are. I mean, it's not even close anymore between number one and number two. Unfortunately, we've lost that much. And I think we've lost a lot of our culture too. And that's just tragic. It really is. It's just tragic. But let me stop. Let me give you a chance to ask me another question because I think hopefully I've answered it. I would compare it to 1974 if you want to compare it to anything. And in 1974, gold was the best investment. But, in a general sense of the word, I would say any kind of potential catastrophe, and we certainly are in the midst of one right now, is going to favor gold. That doesn't mean gold's not going to go down to 3,800 before it goes up to about 5,000 or 10,000. If you want a rough estimate and you want to use statistics, I've used nominal world GDP, nominal world money supply growth, and that's obviously you get these numbers from. Those numbers are never going to be precise, but if you project those numbers out, you end up with the target for gold, I would say around 18,000. Not tomorrow, though it wouldn't be inconsistent. Basically, since let's say 1934, if you look at the growth in nominal world money supply, gold should be trading close to 18,000 today. So as you go forward, it'd be maybe even a little bit higher than that, but that kind of ballpark makes sense. But you have to have a fairly long-term perspective and not go crazy if gold goes down to 3,800. I'm sort of talking to myself because I know I'll go crazy if it does. But it's store of wealth and it will protect you. It definitely will. You can't find any examples. I've never found an example in which gold did not do well during very, very difficult economic times, whether those times are characterized by horrendous inflation, depression, or just deflation. We've had 5 periods of deflation in the U.S. I know you're coming from Canada, so when I say statistics, I'm, unfortunately, through no prejudice whatsoever. I mean, I love Canadians, but just not including them, just including Americans. We've had 5 deflations in this country. Not just the Great Depression, but there were 4 others. Some actually came in the midst of fairly good times. You can't have deflation or negative inflation doesn't mean automatically bad economic times. It could be very good economic times. We've had some of those, but regardless, any time that you had extreme volatility in the, let's say, CPI, gold has been a superior performer. So, I mean, you can just start there. Closest is 74 in terms of exactly what we're going through today. And gold was a superb performer. Boy, if you had nothing but gold, you just stood out from the pack in a way you can never hope to again. So, hope that answers it.
I think it does definitely answer the question, and it gives us a lot of directions that we can go in. So let's try to unpack what you see moving forward. So we've got decline of the US as they're fighting this unwinnable war. Then we have the rise of China moving toward this new system where we've got gold at the center. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like, that transfer, and perhaps a timeline, if it's even possible to say at this point?
Well, I think it's already in play, and you can see it just in terms of the war in Iran right now. I mean, the dollar became the dollar as a reserve currency when it turned into the petrodollar. And there was a quid pro quo. It was negotiated by, I think, Kissinger in 1974 with the Saudis. And the deal was pretty simple. I mean, you can make it very complex if you want, but the basics of it were that the Saudis would agree to price their oil in dollars. And if you wanted to buy Saudi oil, and everybody in the world did, I mean, very few countries were independent of oil, and it was priced in dollars. And those dollars that the Saudis and the other Gulf state economies received were in turn invested in U.S. Treasury bonds and U.S. assets. That was the crux of the deal on the part of the Saudis. Our part of the deal, I mean, we had to get something in exchange for it because it created a hegemon right there. I mean, they extended our hegemony then. And then there was no question we were the hegemon, and there was no question that this would extend it and make it easier to maintain our role in the world. We had to do one thing. We had to agree to protect the Saudis and the other Gulf states from any threats from any other country. We were there. They were the big brother who was always going to protect them. And they could count on us. Back in 1974, our military was totally unmatched. I mean, it was just extraordinary. Today, suddenly we find ourselves fighting a war in foreign shores, West Asia. And we're fighting along with Israel, who I think is widely perceived to have had, may still, I don't know, the strongest army in West Asia. So, mighty hegemon, the U.S. and Israel is fighting a war. Now, war went on for 40 days, and I mean, I want to look at my computer to see whether it's still going on because things are that volatile. I mean, as far as I can tell, the war is still going on. I don't notice a switch to all red or all green. But we've been fighting that war for, now it's gone. We've had a peace, interregnum, which is peace. But the point being, Iran, 90 million, the U.S. and Israel with their mighty militaries have been held to a standstill. If anything, Iran has a definite edge, not because they can really beat us, but because they can wreak so much havoc on the rest of the world. In terms of shutting down the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, clearly we don't have the military to overcome that. Why don't we? And the other thing I want to emphasize very much, and here's really a data point for you. If you have to sort of step back from the situation, you have to ask yourself, well, Iran during the fighting basically attacked all the other GCC countries, the Gulf Cooperative Corporation. Maybe I have this two C's mixed up, but I think that's the Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. Maybe I'm missing one, but those countries, they're all oil rich, and those are countries we're supposed to protect. Let me put it that way. In terms of the 1974 agreement, these are the countries that are pricing the oil in dollars in exchange for our protection. Well, Iran has demonstrated the ability to destroy these countries, basically, during the war. Now, they've gone after The UAE, which is already a shadow of itself. I doubt that the UAE will ever recover. They've gone after the other Gulf countries, but strangely enough, if you think about it, Saudi Arabia hasn't been really touched. I mean, there have been a few token attacks on Saudi Arabia, but they're still pumping about the same amount of oil that they were before. They're not even impeded. I mean, the Houthis, I mean, they're shipping through, they're not going through the Straits of Hormuz. They're going around, my geography is so terrible. I think it's the Red Sea. But they're getting about 7 million barrels out a day or something like that. I mean, they're exporting a lot of oil. Now, Iran could have shut that down. I mean, there's no doubt. They could have, easy. Even the Houthis could have shut that down. And the Houthis, who are allies of Iran, basically have stayed out of the war. So the Saudis have been left untouched. So that's automatically telling you, why are they left untouched? Well, in a new monetary system, they're going to have a major role to play. I mean, they're the world's largest oil exporter. And for practical reasons, I know technically we produce more oil than anyone else, but for reasons, I mean, it would be too complicated to go into. That doesn't do us very much good. I mean, look at gasoline prices in this country, for example. I mean, we don't have the refining. I mean, we have refining capacity, but there's so many bottlenecks everywhere in this country right now that the Saudis are really what it comes to when you're talking about certainly when you're talking about the ability to export companies, full stop. It's the Saudis. They count much, much more than we do. We don't have the ability to really export. The Saudis can export, because of relatively small size, much, much more oil than anyone else. They're a center of whatever happens. Also significant is, their relationship basically with Russia and China. When you mention China, you also have to include Russia too. I mean, there's an alliance that's appears to be deeper every day. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, these countries really, they don't share a culture, certainly. They both have a culture, a very strong culture, which I think is one reason they're very strong countries at this point. But it's certainly a different culture, each one. I mean, after all, China's Buddhist and Confucius, and those are the major cultural endpoints, I would say. And Russia's a Christian country. Now, Russia's been a Christian country for 1,000 or 1,200 years. China's been a Confucianism, and certainly Buddhism goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years. I mean, a lot of time. So they do share that commonality. They both have very long cultures that have persisted through, the worst of times, which I think gives them a major edge. I know I'm diverging a little bit, but I think it's really important for people to understand that it's just not a simple question of why is Iran? I mean, basically what I'm getting at is Iran. How can this be? How can they be beating us? It's just, if you step back, it's extraordinary. I mean, Iran has been sanctioned for 47 years. I mean, they've been restricted. Their public has been restricted. And yet they're able to stand our attacks. And, it's been nothing wrong with our weapons. They've worked exceptionally well. But they basically have created a sort of an asymmetric situation. The only thing that they have on their side, and this is, again, hard for me to believe. I mean, I grew up in a world for most of my young life. I mean, when I was a young person, most of that period spent as a young person was spent in a context in which America was so supreme. I mean, I think arguably, I'm not a historian, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find any country that ever could match America in the post-war period through 1971, through the early 1970s in any event. It was extraordinary. And, basically, we had a culture back then. I mean, I have to emphasize that. I mean, we didn't believe in a religion, but we believed in religion, writ large. I mean, we believed in higher power. This was Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson, and I was going to pick up my biography of Madison, but that'll look too pretentious because it's right by my desk. Jefferson and Madison were very religious people, but no one knew what religion they followed. They deliberately didn't, but they were part of our founding culture. And this is what really separates, let's say, a country like Iran, even countries like China and countries like Russia from where we are today. We've lost that culture. And that is so important to realize. Getting back to how Iran can come up and basically hold us to a standstill, not only us, but Israel too. Bear in mind, Israel has a lot of missiles and a fierce military. They're fighting everybody. I mean, really, their allies in the Gulf right now are, Hezbollah and I don't know, these terrorist states that are, off of, the share a border with Israel. So the Houthis are a legitimate ally, and I think Oman is becoming an ally, and then expect Qatar to become an ally. UAE, I really doubt. But anyway, the question remains, how is this possible? And that's why I introduced the idea of culture. I don't agree with any of these cultures. I don't want people to misunderstand me. I don't have a passport for Russia or China or Iran. Not interested in that at all. I mean, do they do terrible things? Awful things. Terrible, horrible things. But on the other hand, there's a cohesiveness that's inherent in these countries. And that's one of the things that's very, very important to understand. If you're asking yourself, how in the world has Iran done what they've done? It's a culture. I mean, they're not so happy with a theocratic government. I mean, who can be? I mean, I have to say that it's gotten better in recent years, gotten better for women in particular. Believe it or not, Iran today has more female college students than male. This is unbelievable as an anecdote. I mean, I was stunned. I mean, I had to learn this. My impression of Iran, if we'd had this interview 7 or 8 or 10 years ago, there's no way I'd be saying anything positive about Russia, China, or Iran. I honestly, this is just learned because if you're going to manage money, you owe it to your clients to understand what's going on in the world and not just react reflexively what you think should be going on, because typically that's not a good way of approaching things because it's rarely true. No one's that smart to know what's going on. And I was certainly under a tremendous number of misconceptions. One I wasn't under, as a sidebar, is how great this country was. And, once I realized a bunch of other things, I realized it's kind of our choice as to whether we want to give ourselves a chance to get back there again. Okay, look at Iran as an example of what culture can mean to a country. Iran, 90 million strong, quarter of our size, roughly, maybe give or take about 25% of our size. Sanctioned for who knows how long. And yes, coming back to women and how they're treating, that's sort of what people first point out when they say terrible things about Iran, and they're right. Iran's treatment of women has been horrendous for most of this time, but it's changed. It's changed in probably the last, 15, 20 years, and it's gradually gotten better. I'm only stressing this because it comes out of a culture. And now, getting back to that one anecdote that I wanted to mention, Fields Medal is a medal that's awarded every 4 years for the best mathematician in the world. There's several of them that will get it, in contrast to the Nobel Prize, which is awarded every year. So in a way, it's probably the most prestigious medal you can win in sciences. We don't have a Nobel Prize for mathematics. We have one for physics, but not mathematics, and mathematics underlies most of the hard sciences. So getting a Fields Medal is an extremely prestigious thing to do. And this is a pox on the world, incidentally, not on Iran. In fact, the opposite. There had never been a winner of the Fields Medal that was a woman. No woman had ever won a Fields Medal. There have been very brilliant female mathematicians, but I don't know that they're giving Fields Medals when they arose, but there's now a lot of brilliant female mathematicians. The first female mathematician to win a Fields Medal was an Iranian woman, educated at the University of Tehran, and brilliant woman, and tragically died at 40. She did her work before 40, but that came out of the Iranian education system. That woman was born there with all their prejudices, everything else. They treated women, and it's continued. 53% of their college students right now are women. 47% are men. And, they've made progress. And now what you see is that in the face of all these attacks, you see an entire country coming together. They're not running from the attacks. In fact, when Trump first threatened to blow up all the bridges, you saw Iranians lining the bridges. Come get us. We're together. And that kind of mindset doesn't grow out of anything other than a culture. I mean, Iranian culture is the Persian culture. I mean, before the mullahs took over in 47 years ago, 1970, in Carter's regime, when you had the Iranian crisis, they were just Persian, and their culture extends back 3,000 years. And I think the Persian aspect of that culture has been, is triumphing. I mean, it's sort of outweighing the theocracy that we see from the mullahs. And, they have elections in Iran. And, they have the supreme leader who's a religious leader. And they also have another leader that's elected. I mean, their elections, as far as we can tell, are free. And you're going to hear a lot of propaganda against Iran. And some of it's true, some of it's not true. But what you can't deny is there's an underlying culture. There's a togetherness there. The same thing can be said about China. The same thing can be said about Russia. They have a culture. There's Mother Russia. There are people during the Second World War, during the Battle of Stalingrad, that, in the face of Stalin, who was a known monster in many, many ways, they still went to their deaths shouting Stalin's name. And it was that victory in Stalingrad that really won the war, not just for Russia, but for the entire West. Yes, the U.S. fought very, very bravely, but the war was largely over. I mean, once Hitler lost in Russia, he had lost. And how did he lose in Russia? Culture. That was it. You could say similar things about China, too. They have a culture that goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years. If you just step back from China, I'm not trying to make a case. I don't want to go to China. I don't really believe in their culture, but I believe in culture writ large. I do. I mean, I think it's essential for a country to be great. They have to have a culture above all. And if the culture is going, stay, it's got to have good leaders. And fortunately for the Chinese, and fortunately for the Russians, both Putin and Xi are pretty good leaders. In fact, I would say superb, just judging from an objective historical stance. I mean, would I want to go out for drinks with either one of them? No, not really. But I wouldn't want to go out with drinks with Trump either. There have been a lot of presidents that I would have loved to have gone out with drinks, but Trump's certainly not one of them. But, and Xi or Putin, no, I don't think so. I mean, but still, they are doing good things for their country, and they're operating, in a way that benefits their country as they see it. I don't think there's a lot of corruption at the top in either Russia or China. And I will ask a question that is unfortunately rhetorical. Do you think there's any corruption in the U.S. at the top? That's a rhetorical question. So, yes. Okay. So, enough said. The fact that Iran can stand and in front of targets that, have been named by its attacker and say, come get us. It's going to be very, very difficult to beat that country. Now, come back to education and the first female winner of the Fields Medal being a female, whatever, I confused something or other there. But they have excellent, superb education. I mean, it was really on display when you saw the negotiating team. The U.S., and I'm not saying anything against Kushner or Witkoff, who were negotiating on the part of the U.S. They may be wonderful guys, but they're real estate. They know a lot about real estate. They don't know anything about the issues involved in negotiating, yet they were our negotiators. On the other side of the table were the Iranians. I think the lead negotiator was a PhD in philosophy, expert on Kant. I mean, this is just a different mindset than we have. And I'm not saying anything against real estate people. I mean, but you don't want school teachers negotiating with you. You don't want negotiating for you. I mean, maybe Trump was forced to, because maybe the country, you just don't know what's going on here today. But maybe the country was at such a point, or maybe Trump felt so trapped that he felt the only people he could send were people that he trusted. And he trusted Witkoff and Kushner. I mean, that's one interpretation. I have no idea. But I do know this without any doubt. They were not equipped to do the negotiations. And it's been a disaster since then. Iran, though, has just been straight by. And as coming back to the education, their weaponry is better than ours. That's it. Their missiles are hypersonic. I mean, we have one example of a hypersonic missile. I mean, backing up, in 2022 in this country, our conception of hypersonic missiles, we didn't have really a hypersonic program. Our conception of hypersonic missiles were missiles that flew very, very fast, maybe Mach 5, Mach 8, I don't know, even Mach 10. But we didn't think they could go very far. Then all of a sudden, and here you can check what I'm saying. I mean, if you can still find it on the internet. If you can't, I can send you copies because I'm very wary of this. China all of a sudden, out of the blue, well, not out of the blue, they send a hypersonic missile around the world and comes to the other side of the world and strikes down. And, I don't know how fairly close to a target. You can bet it would be almost a bullseye today because, 4 years have passed. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at that point said, my goodness, this is not something I expected or we expected. This is a Sputnik moment. Okay, I'm not going to go through all the history of Sputnik, but I will say not in so many words. In other words, this is a moment that requires our country to come together. And we've got to face the fact that we're facing an enemy, or potential enemy, that is well advanced, well past us. I mean, we didn't even know that there was this possibility, much less have a program to do it. Now, 4 years later, we still don't have anything that comes close to what the hypersonic weaponry that either China or Russia, and for that matter, Iran possesses. How is that possible? I mean, in a similar situation in the 1950s that unfortunately, I'm that old, can remember very clearly was what the Sputnik moment was. And I'm not going to go through the whole detail of it, but it was a moment where Russia demonstrated superiority over us. And that was during the Cold War. And what did we do? We all came together as a society, education, the government, everybody on the same side. And 10 years later, we had a man on the moon. No, a little bit more than 10 years, 14 years later, whatever. I always do it in terms of when I graduated, and I always get mixed up. But it wasn't too long later that we had landed a man on the moon. Man has not been back to the moon since then. But with the point being, not so much, the accomplishment of landing on the moon, the ability to come together, rich, poor, ethnicities, black, white, whatever. You were all Americans, whether you were Japanese, whether you were Jewish, Christian, Muslim, didn't matter. If you were American, you were American, and you were going to come together, and we did as a country, and we surpassed Russia by maybe 5 or 7, I don't know how many years. And that still stands as a singular accomplishment of man, that we've been to the moon. How long ago was that? I mean, that's 30, 40 years ago that we were on the moon. It's extraordinary. And we did it in such short period of time. No way to do it today. Milley, who was then chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was censored. They're told, shut up about it. No mention of Sputnik moment anymore. Can't do it today. We're no longer a culture. We've lost our bearings in terms of what we were. We are gone. I mean, and that comes back to your question about gold, believe it or not. I mean, there is a point to what I'm driving at. This is demonstrated. Our failure to overcome Iran, when you would think objectively, man from Mars coming down and looking at the relative advantages, would say, why bother fighting? Just tell them to lay down their arms. Not only didn't they lay down their arms, they've beaten us, basically, or they've held us to a draw, put it that way. We've been unable to make a dent in that country. I mean, made a lot of dents, but not a dent in the soul or the culture of that country. They've stood together. They basically have figured out ways to launch their missiles from underground so we cannot hit them with our bombs. And they destroyed a lot of the UAE, and Saudi Arabia stands ready to take control of it, or ready to be, along with Iran, believe it or not. I mean, two years ago, she came and negotiated some sort of a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, who have been, still are kind of enemies, but now they're frenemies. I would call them frenemies. I mean, but they're never going to be completely together. I don't know too much about Saudi culture. From what I hear about them, they're awful. But Iran is not. But whatever, even if they're good or bad, they're different religion, even though they're both Muslim. The Saudis are Sunni, the Iranians are Shia. So that's a major, major difference. It's probably larger than the difference between Jews and Christians. I mean, at least as large, but they're getting along. And it's sort of a reluctant friendship, whatever, like I said, but they're probably both going to be part of a new security architecture. That security architecture is going to carry with it gold-backed currency, united gold-backed currency. I mean, China has sort of already started. I mean, if this is not well known, but if you're living in China right now, you can go to the Shanghai Gold Exchange and exchange however many yuan you want for gold. It's a completely backed currency. It's backed totally by gold. And to some extent, if you're buying in yuan, I mean, if you're trading goods for yuan, there's a part of China where you can go to and theoretically exchange the yuans you may receive for gold. I mean, it gets complicated after that because, that's not enough to define a whole new broad-based system. But once you have Saudi Arabia in there on your side, I mean, you've knocked out the major foundational element that was present with the creation of the petrodollar, which has been the basis of our reserve currency. So you're seeing, when you ask how long, I don't know how long, but we're getting close right now. And this is something that I'm speculating on. I think it's China and Russia, ironically, are our best friends right now. We just don't know it. I mean, in the sense that they could really destroy this country monetarily. I believe that they could. Their economies, etc. I mean, China's trade tentacles reach out much, much further than we do. They run these massive surpluses, which has been a source of a lot of their funds. I think they'd be delighted not to run surpluses. We should be grateful that they do not want the yuan to ever be the center, the reserve currency. Now, there may be a period of transition in which the yuan does serve as a reserve currency. All we have to do is agree with them. Not agree with them. No. They don't want people agreeing with them. They want people to maintain their own sovereignty. That's really, really critical to China. And it's critical to Russia too, but especially China. And they're, after all, when it comes to monetary and trade, they're the number one country in the world. They'll tolerate almost any kind of sovereignty. They want people to have their own culture, their own beliefs, are very tolerant of that. I mean, in China today, though you're told that they were so horrible to Muslims, there's no evidence of that. None. I mean, Muslim countries went up there, UN ambassador, went up there to see how horrible things were. She was asked to sign an agreement saying that China was mistreating all their Muslims. She said, how can I sign such an agreement? I'm sort of conflating a couple of different things, but I'm not misrepresenting anything. She said, in effect, how can I sign an agreement when I saw more mosques per capita than exist in Muslim countries? I mean, China's dealing with 50 ethnicities. I mean, the major ethnicity are the Han. Their first way they wanted to solve the Muslim problem in China, just to give you an example, was to intermarry the Han with the Muslim. But that didn't work. So, they did everything they could. And the only Muslims they were ever battling were the radical Muslims who wanted to destroy China and everyone else. But I mean, I'm just saying China gets a lot of bad publicity. Again, I repeat, because I don't want anyone to think that's listening to this conversation that I'm really pro-China. No, I'm not. And I've never been pro-Russia until, I'm not pro-Russia yeah, but I really understand where they're coming from. And I really understand they want a world that's good for everybody, including the United States. They don't want to destroy us. If they did, we'd probably already be feeling it. And it's getting to the point where we might not be giving them a choice. And that's what scares the daylights out of me. Because if we don't make it through this period, I don't know, maybe another century before we have a chance to come back. Maybe never. Who knows? But I mean, they hold all the cards, Charlotte. And I don't want to see that happening. Now, the one thing coming once again back to, I know you don't care probably a lot about a lot of this history and stuff, or your audience, and I apologize for that, but I'm trying to illustrate again how important gold should be for your portfolio. If you're not represented there, you're faced with really being poverty. I don't care who you are. If you are represented there, then you have some salvation. I've been money manager much less, not nearly as long as I've been an investment advisor, but I've never been in a position, I'll sort of end it here if you want, in which I've not been after, my goal has not been to beat the market or beat other money managers. I've always, been in a position where I want to beat the other guy. Doesn't matter whether I'm up or down. I just want to beat the other guy. I'm no longer in that position. I don't care. Someone beats me. It doesn't bother me now. Well, it does bother me. I mean, I want to be honest about it. Of course it bothers me, but I don't think it's the way to be in selecting your portfolio and picking your portfolio. My only goal is to protect my clients. And if they can make money doing it, and I believe I can, but I could be dead wrong, I think that I want to make sure if there is some sort of collapse, I've kept them in the game. And I think that for me, on a personal level, on a level, everyday level, is probably the most significant thing about what's changed in this country. And I think that, any investor, anyone that's interested in stocks, make sure you have investments that are going to protect your wealth. The best way historically, and I didn't even get into the spiritual significance of gold, but there's a reason gold has been around. It's not because it's a brand. It's because it has special significance. If you go to churches or other places, you'll find gold adornments. 5,000 years ago, amulets were put into gold, into burial caskets that were sent down rivers to protect to escort the dead into a world in which they'll, be able to thrive or be happy, whatever. Gold has a spiritual significance. It also has an obvious monetary significance. Got to have a bridge between the culture that you have and the monetary, because, we live in a real world, and real world means material world. And you don't want materiality to go out of hand. Gold is the only meaningful bridge you can build. So all I'm saying is that there's a reason gold has served this role. It's not going to give up this role. I mean, it's going to remain what it has been for 5,000 or 4, I don't know how many thousands of years. But it's probably more than 5,000, to be honest with you. But right now, coming back to, again, portfolios, gold's got to be a centerpiece, maybe cash and monopolies. I'm just telling you what we're doing. And in case things really go well, or, go well, meaning we take the right path, commodities are going to go through the roof. You're going to have a crazy, wide-eyed commodity boom. Whether it's copper, you're not going to go wrong, no matter what commodity you own, including oil. But that's assuming we take the right path. If we take the wrong path, it's only going to be gold. But even, you still have to bet on turbulence. And, there are other investments that'll serve you well if it's just turbulent before, we come out on the other side. And so that's it. I think I've talked way too much, but I'm sorry about that. But anyway.
No, it's fascinating to hear about the cultural angle. And I think we did need all the context to eventually come all the way back around to gold. And I like that you tied it into what can investors actually do? Because I imagine if people hear all of this, they're going to be wondering, how do I approach this? So it sounds like what we need to have is, as you mentioned, gold as the cornerstone. I'm going to ask one small follow-up question. We'll see how this goes. Do you include silver in there as well? You've got this very high price.
Yes, I do.
So silver too.
The ironic problem with silver is that it's also an industrial metal, and that makes it more volatile, and it makes it more subject to industry. But yes, I mean, this country, the best years in this country, I think were probably a bimetallic standard. I haven't done that research to know that they were better than just a pure gold standard. But yes, silver, of course, should be in there. And I mean, theoretically, anything that you can touch that'll have value in case things really go crazy. It's like even copper can be in there, small, whatever. It's not as essential, but yes, in answer to your question, yes. And also companies that have monopolies that extend the entire globe. What's ironic here is that there are when 20 years ago, there must have been a few dozen companies that had a AAA rating. I only find 2 right now, and I would recommend them. I don't mind recommending them. Johnson & Johnson and Microsoft. Now, Microsoft, I'm a little bit less sure of because of the AI stuff, but both those companies have 2 things in common. They're both AAA rated, and at the same time, they both have higher credit ratings than the U.S. government. So I probably rather own Johnson & Johnson, certainly, than U.S. government debt. If credit rating is basically your concern, the debt that comes out of Johnson & Johnson and or Microsoft, I don't know how much debt Microsoft has. Maybe they have none, but whatever. I mean, it's a safer bet than U.S. government debt, according to Moody's and S&P 500, according to American companies. That's how bad things have come. But those kinds of companies, I'm not saying it's only gold, but gold would be, way up there. I think cash, U.S. dollars, yes, they're going to go down in value. And I'm sure you've had a lot of guests that have talked about, how you measure the dollar in terms of gold, and that's the key thing. If you're going to look at the dollar today, and one thing I would suggest for people who follow these things closely, I think the DXY index is not particularly relevant. It's sort of like which is the worst of the countries that are doing really poorly. If you want to if you want to follow the dollar in terms of another currency, I would follow it in terms of the yuan as a clue to what's really happening. Of course, you're following it in terms of gold. Once you know the gold price, you know how the dollar is performing. And I know that goes without saying, but the yuan is very close. It's going to be, it's going to serve you better than following the DXY. That's just a sidebar. It's not really important, but you summed it up very well. I mean, you summed up what I said. Amazing. I couldn't sum it up that succinctly. Thank you very much, but really appreciate it.
Of course. I try my best. And I think we can wrap it up there. I think this was a great conversation and would love to have you back to go over how these things end up progressing. We'll see how it goes. But yes, for now, thank you so much.
And thank you so much for really, summing up a very long and probably hard to follow conversation in a couple of, really succinct sentences. I mean this sincerely. I mean, I could not have done it myself, but I really appreciate it. Thank you, Charlotte.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. And again, looking forward to having you back. But for now, once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod, of course, with investingnews.com. And this is Dr. Stephen Leeb.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We'd also love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a comment below.